Hi everyone, I thought I would give you an overview of the assignment this week. As you can see, this is the experimental research assignment. So, what I would like you to do is to create a hypothetical research question, and then for that research question, work through a number of possible types of designs for it, and then ultimately make a determination of which design would be best for your particular research topic. And so I thought I would run you through what that might look like in the various phases. You'll see an overview of the question here. Work through one complete example for experimental designs, and this is the screencast that you'll follow. The topic that I'd like you to focus on is peer tutoring. So a student helping another student, same age versus cross-age tutoring or some variation, and of course you can make up your own variables, but you work through a number of possible designs to address that question. So the first thing you need to do is to pose a hypothetical research question and identify the independent and dependent variables. So I've done this below here, and I'm actually going to move this into this section because this is a better place for it. So here is my hypothetical research question. Is there a difference in SAT test scores between people who took a preparation course and those who did not? So someone who participated in a training course, does that improve their test scores in comparison to those who did not? So my independent variable would be, I'm sure you've just guessed, that it's their participation in the training. And there's two levels. There's the people who participated in the training and people who did not participate in the training. Obviously, if we're comparing those two things, that would be the point of comparison. The dependent variable then is whether or not that training impacts their achievement on the SAT test. Another way to remember this again is that the independent variable is a thing that is manipulated, it's the treatment, and the dependent variable is the item that's impacted by that treatment. So, if we are to look at pre-experimental designs here, and the pre-experimental designs, remember, are not ones that you would use for your studies, but they are ones that can provide some of the framework, some of the grounding for an experimental research. So sometimes they're conducted just to get a better sense of how things play out. So this is a one group pre-experimental design, one group. So we just have one group, we don't have the two groups, it's not a comparison. One group pre-test, post-test design. So here's our pre-test. It's an SAT practice test. Obviously the 0 means the test. The X, it's a one group, so it's just people who receive the training. Perhaps it's a week-long online module, perhaps it's a series of face-to-face classes, whatever it may be. And then there's the SAT, the final test. So that's our pre-test, post-test, one group design. Okay. And the next one, static group comparison design. The basically there's no practice test. They are split into two groups. A group that receives the training and a group that don't receive the training or prepare by themselves. And then they have the SAT achievement tests. So it's essentially just some people get some training, some people don't from an existing population. So you can see already that might be problematic in terms of making decisions about whether or not certain people do better after the training on the SAT test, and these are called the confounds. For instance, if someone was taking the test because they had taken the test previously, maybe on several occasions, then we would have that testing effect influencing their ability on this particular test, or they might just come in with exceptional skills in taking tests. Perhaps they're applying to an Ivy League college, and you know, whether they're in the self-preparation groups or the whether they're in the training group, it's obviously going to impact the overall effect of how that training or self-preparation is perceived on the SAT achievement. So again, pre-experimental designs serve their purpose to kind of get a sense of what's going on, but in order to really determine whether or not there's a causal effect of the training, we have to use an experimental design. So the next experimental design, pre-test, post-test control group design, you'll see that we do have the randomization here, and it's the then we have our practice test. This is our pre-test. Then we have the training, the 1 week online module, and then we have the SAT final test, the post-test. So the control group is, as you can see here, it is really the comparison group as well, and sometimes those two are referred to as the same in experimental search, because you're comparing this group with the other. So our comparison group, our control, is those that receive self-preparation, or do self-preparation, I should say, as opposed to those who actually get the training. So again, randomized, pre-test, those who work by themselves, and then SAT as the final test. So the only possible issue with this type of research is the testing effect, whether or not that makes a difference on the final achievement. And so this is one of the decision points in whether or not to use the pre-test, post-test control group design, whether or not you think that there may be a testing effect that plays out with that particular study. So this is the value of the post-test only control group design. The participants don't get that practice test. They, as you can see in example 4 here, they just have the post-test, and the pre-test is missing from this area, but it still has the benefits of randomization. The issue with this is that it doesn't take into account the potential mortality, which is the dropping out of participants, which can have an effect on how the statistical analysis of effect plays out when it's calculated. So in many ways, the Solomon 4 group design is designed to address those kind of issues amongst those two tests, but the issue with the Solomon 4 group design itself is that you need many more participants in order to get the numbers, because you essentially have 4 groups that you are placing people in, 4 randomized groups. You have the pre-test, post-test design here, and you have the post-test only control group design here. So you are able to take into account whether or not there has been a testing effect and address that, but you run into issues of numbers. So those are the different experimental designs. And as for quasi-experimental designs, let's have a look at the non-equivalent control group design. So quasi-experimental designs, just a quick note. Again, there's no random assignment of groups. Essentially, it's the kind of research that quasi-experimental research that is commonly done for the same reasons we do causal comparative research, in that it's not always possible or ethical to split up groups to receive certain trainings. So we have to use the groups that we have. What is common is that you can randomly assign the treatment to the individuals in those groups. So you could use your number table within a class to kind of randomly select who will participate or who will get the training and who won't, who will have to prepare themselves. So that does provide some level of randomization, but not at the selection of participants. So you'll see that the R has been dropped. There's the pretest, there's the training, the SAT. Again, control group design. There's a group that prepares by themselves. It's a comparison with those who are taking the training. I'm going to let you complete the multiple time series design or counterbalance design. Those are both interesting designs. You should look at those tables and that section in the chapter on experimental research to help you with that format. But I think you have the idea of how to lay those out. So from my research question, is there a difference in SAT test scores between people who took a preparation course and those who did not? Which is the best? Which design would I recommend? Well, if I think the practice test is going to contribute significantly to learning, I would use the post-test only control group design, and that is this one here. And the reason I chose that is that I think, one, it deals with the need to randomize participants. It avoids the potential test bias, because we're actually looking at whether or not people do better on the SAT tests. So having them take the SAT test in advance, it may influence what their final SAT test scores are. So that's one of the key reasons. And the third reason is I don't think I'm likely to get the numbers necessary to conduct the Solomon 4 group design. But if I did, then I might well select the Solomon 4 group design. But again, I don't think I'm going to get those numbers. So that's why I chose the post-test only control group design. So that's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to make your own research question. You can use peer tutoring and a couple of variables. And if you want to use a different topic, then fine. Identify your hypothetical research question, identify your independent variables, your dependent variables, and work through the pre-experimental designs, experimental designs, quasi-experimental designs, and then address which design you would use to address your hypothetical research question and why. Okay, best of luck.